Okay, I think now's probably a fairly decent time to start. 3 minutes early, no big deal. Um, yeah, I am still getting used to starting streams and creating like actually nice looking frames and anywho, no more excuses. Hello everyone, my name is Coach, and I am a Go Create mentor. So over the past 6 weeks, I've been creating these live streams, and you might notice that I'm kind of dipping into a subject and then dipping back out of a subject and moving on to another one. And I'm doing that in an effort to create a little bit of variety because not everyone wants to learn how to code, not everyone wants to learn how to be a graphic designer. Um, so I'm kind of going in and out of subjects, and I'm going to be delivering you sort of a rotating schedule of topics that will hopefully keep things interesting. There are a lot of great members at Go Create, and there's a lot of great future members that will go to Go Create. And there's also just a lot of people out there that I've shared these links with that are just generally good people and lifelong learners. And so you'll find that with this channel, and more specifically these playlists, uh, it's it's going to become very diverse, and it's going to cover a wide variety of softwares and other subjects such as programming and uh, who knows what else. At some point, I will get good with my streaming, and I'm going to try to do some kind of like live camera streaming at the actual Go Create facility when the time is right, so that we can take some of the things that we're learning here in software and actually apply it physically on the hardware. And in order for me to do that, there's a lot of moving pieces that I've got to sort out still. But I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an insight to the direction that I'm hoping to take. Anywho, so let's talk today about SolidWorks. Um, Go Create has some SolidWorks licenses at their facility in the design studio. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I, for the longest time, have been using a CAD software or computer aided design software called Fusion 360, made by the company called Autodesk. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Fusion 360, and at some point, believe it or not, I might be inclined to show you some stuff in Fusion 360. But I'm building up to a story here. So, for the longest time, I've used Fusion 360, and it's a great software uh, for certain applications, like for certain users and for people that have a different way of approaching their goals. Fusion 360 is perfectly fine. But SolidWorks, on the other hand, it gets a little bit closer to an industry standard. I'm not saying that it is the industry standard, I'm saying that it gets closer to. You'll find that bigger companies like Boeing and Spirit may use something like CATIA. I do not know anything about CATIA. I don't have access to the software, so therefore I probably will not cover it. But I am going to cover SolidWorks. I had gone at one point last year to the facility, and I sat down and watched one of the other mentors slash techs use SolidWorks to design this really cool, intricate part. And I was hooked. However, when I sat down and actually tried to begin using SolidWorks, it was a bit overwhelming, to say the least. Like the buttons, user interface, the layout, commands, they were just completely different than what I was used to in Fusion 360. And it threw me for a massive loop. The other thing is, um, there are trainings for SolidWorks out there on the internet, but you either need to sign up for something or you need to pay for some guy to give you some life changing SolidWorks training and pay for his book and whatever. Uh, and there's just a little bit of a barrier to entry. My goal is to, with this introduction and the future of this series in SolidWorks, is to hopefully lower the bar a little bit and make it more accessible to um, all of you at GoCreate. As usual, make sure that you have your favorite refreshment with you tonight. I am in full effect when it comes to nice monotone voice qualities, and so I'd almost recommend that you get your favorite cup of caffeine and keep it readily available so I don't absolutely bore you. I don't know. I'm just talking smack. All right. So for those of you that have like absolutely zero experience with designing something in CAD or a software like Fusion 360 or SolidWorks, basically the gist is that we're going to take a series of sketches. We're going to convert those sketches into a 3D part. That 3D part can either become a 2D drawing or it could be incorporated into an assembly. And you can use various things like features and dimensions to control how that part looks and interacts with other parts. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my screen capture here. Okay. So just right off the bat, when you turn on SolidWorks, you're going to have this big gray screen, or sometimes if I'm going to actually restart SolidWorks just so you can see what it looks like here. Sometimes you're greeted with this like, ooh, splash screen. It just went away. And that's where you can open like your previous like files and things you may have been working with in the past. But anyway, so let's see here. We need to go ahead and start SolidWorks. We've already done that. I'm just kind of following my notes, if you will. Let's go ahead and just get right down to it, and let's up here in the top right, we're gonna go ahead and click new, and I'm gonna choose a template, if you will. We're gonna be making something pretty small, so I am going to just I'll just pick that one, I guess. Hit okay. Okay, so right off the bat, let's get acquainted with our layout. Yours might look a little bit different because like I've actually got mine sort of altered a little bit to use small icons and little bits of text. Yours will probably use big icons. So if I go to options, let's see, display. Yeah, I'm not gonna mess with that. I'm not gonna do any searching today. So, all right. So right off the bat, we have some things that we need to become acquainted with. So right along the top here, when you see the features tab, sketches, surfaces, that is called the command manager. This whole area right up at the top is called command manager. And every time you switch over from one thing to another, the options change. Like for example, on features, we still have our traditional home and the new and the open, save, that kind of stuff. But in features, we have things like extrudes, revolve, and then lofted and extruded cuts, hole wizards, things like that. When we go to sketch, though, we see that we can create a new sketch. We can dimension the sketch. We can do lines, rectangles, slots, and circles, and arcs, and all kinds of stuff. If we go to surfaces, the menu changes even more. So it's just important to be cognizant of what you're actually attempting to do, and just kind of relate what commands are in each one of these tabs. So and then the other thing too is that you can actually get rid of some of these tabs if, like, we don't have any intention today on doing simulation, so we can just come down and uncheck simulation. We don't want to do any analysis, so we'll right click again on the tabs, go to tabs, we'll get rid of that. Yeah, and we can just kind of leave the rest alone. I like to leave the evaluate, and I like to leave SolidWorks visualize because I typically go into that in other things. Okay, moving right along, we have our quick access toolbar, which I've actually located. I've moved mine down here, but you can pretty much put this anywhere you want. We have our heads up tool, or our heads up toolbar right here. So that changes our views, and I'll kind of play around with this here in a second. And then on the left hand side, going down, we have this thing. It's called a feature manager design tree. And so you'll see that as I add features to this part, you'll see that this blue bar will eventually move down and down and down, and I can start playing with some of the features. We have our quick access toolbar, talked about that. Talked about the command manager, the features tab, the evaluate tab. We'll go into the evaluate tab in a little bit, and we'll talk about sheet metal later. And another thing, breadcrumbs. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this opportunity to sort of jump off the figurative bridge and start with a sketch. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new sketch, and as soon as you hit new sketch, you're automatically greeted with hey dude, where do I need to do this sketch? Where is the creation of such a sketch? And it says right here, select a plane on which to create the sketch for the entity. So with that command active, we can tell it we want it on the top plane, we want it on the right plane, or the front. And if that is getting confusing, if you hold the center clicker wheel on your mouse and rotate around, you can kind of manipulate the view. But if you want a little bit more concise control, you can come up here to this sort of upper right hand corner here and expand it. And you can see right here we have the front plane, the top plane, and the right plane. So we can actually use that as our way to select, as well as just hovering over the plane also. So let's just go ahead and pick the top plane. Okay. Now, this is basically the start of a sketch. There's nothing there. And we can start with primitive shapes and sort of move forward. So if we hover over rectangle, we can draw a rectangle. So let's just pick this origin point right here in the middle. We click, we drag out, and we can control some dimensions. So if we want to do dimension, let's cancel that. Let's grab our smart dimension tool. We'll click that. We'll hover over this line until it turns orange. Bring it up, and we'll place the dimension by clicking again. And now notice that it's giving me the ability that it's highlighted this large number blue, so I can literally type in 100 and hit enter. So that's 100 millimeters, because down here in the bottom left corner I've actually had it set to millimeters. Another fun thing that we can do is click on this line, and we can do a couple things. We can hit 100, or we can type in something like, let's just do something like 6, and then we'll put space IN for inches, and it automatically converts it to 152.4. Okay, so let's go Control Z and undo that dimension. The other way that we can control this, if we wanted this to be a perfect square, is we can actually add a constraint. So we can click on this line, hold our shift key, and click on the second line. And now we have on the left hand side some properties. We have the selected entities of line 3 and 4. Any existing relations, which there are none, and then we can add some of those relations or constraints here. So obviously perpendicular is a constraint that we can apply upon this. I kind of think it's not relevant right now, but because it's the most applicable thing, SolidWorks is going to automatically make it a bold text. What I want to do is actually control how long that second line is based on the one that I had declared up above, or the horizontal line. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit equal, and you'll notice that now there's these little green boxes that basically force these two lines to become equal. So we hit OK, and what's cool is once I double click this dimension, I can come in here and say, you know what, I want it to be 50 millimeters, hit enter, and it's going to automatically change that shape, or it's going to update the dimension here as well as here. Okay, so we have just our basic, this is just a very basic sketch, and for now I'm going to go ahead and just hit finish sketch or exit sketch by clicking this. It's kind of like an exit button for the sketch, so I'll just click that, and our sketch is saved. Now let's play with our view orientation and the view heads up toolbar. So we can click this drop down button right here, and you have a way to go to the front view. You can go to the left, you can go to the right by holding, like you can select from any one of these as I highlight it. So I just click front. But what I'm going to do is go into this isometric view, or you can hold Control 7. So now we have this isometric view of our square. So with the sketch highlighted, what we're going to do is go to features now, and we can do our first extruded boss. So we'll click on this button, and you can see right off the bat that it's already added a little bit of a thickness to this part for us. So if we zoom in, you can see there's just this 1 millimeter thickness right off the bat. But I don't necessarily want to do that. So there's a couple different things that you can do here on this. You can drag and slide your extrusion if you want. You can go the opposite way. So for now, I'm just going to come over to this little highlighted area. I'm going to type in 50 so I get a perfect cube. So we got our perfect cube there. And there are some instances when you're doing these extrusions, or when you're making an extruded boss, there are some instances when you might need to do like a direction 2, like a second direction. So when we get a little bit more advanced in our SolidWorks series, when I go a little bit further into detail on this, you'll see it like where this might apply. But for now, I activated Solid 2. I've got blind selected, and I'll talk about that more in a second. But I can say, hey, I want you to extrude upwards 50 millimeters, and then I want to extrude downwards. Maybe I want to do downwards of 25 millimeters. And it'll add 25 to the bottom of the part. I'm going to go ahead and for now uncheck that. Another option you have is to do a mid-plane. So you have these different options for your directions. You can go blind, meaning I'm just going to drag it, or I'm going to just size it up to this thing. You can go up to a vertex, up to a surface, up to, or offset from a surface up to a body in a mid-plane. For demonstration purposes, I'll go ahead and hit mid-plane, and it's going to take the 50 millimeters and divide that by 2. So it's 25 this way and 25 that way. And we still have our perfect cube. So let's switch back from mid to blind. It's back up top now. Okay. If you might run into a situation where you haven't like declared the contour, for example. So I'll just demonstrate now. I'll just hit extrude. Grab this. See, and so it says sketch 1, contour 1. So sometimes you have to like declare that. So if we just clear selections, it's not wanting to do that for me. Yeah, that's what I want to extrude. Come back over here to 50 millimeters. Hit OK. And then I can hit this check mark here and this green check mark here, and they both accomplish the same thing. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. And here we go. We have our first cube. And nested within this box extrude is the sketch that I used to create it. So there's a dependency here. This sketch, or I should say this feature, this boss extrude, is dependent upon this sketch. Some people, especially ones that like to be super tidy with what they're doing, they like to name the various features. So right now we have boss extrude 1, but we can come over here and name this feature cube. What is going on with my shift key? Cube. Okay, so you could do that. Or you can be a little bit more descriptive and come in and type base cube feature. Hit enter, and there we go. We got our let's turn off that instant 3D. Okay, and there's our sketch. All right, perfect. So let's just zoom and go Control-7 for the isometric view. Now you'll notice that I got this like blue arrow sort of pointing around, and that's because we have our origins are showing, so we can get rid of some of this stuff. There we go. And you can like declutter your view, or you can clutter it up. You can add a bunch of stuff back in. Let's see here. Planes, we want to show height. There we go. So you just have that on like non-stop all the time. But I don't really want to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off in the heads-up display. Let's do Control 7. Gets us back to isometric. We can play with our graphics. So if I turn off Real View Graphics, I can give some of that processing power back to the computer. Turn that back on, you'll get more of a realistic, shiny look. Because it's tied to a material. I'll talk about that in a second. We turn on shadows. So now we can see the shadow being cast on the floor there. We can turn on ambient occlusion. We can turn on perspective. So now it gives us more of a realistic look at the cube. We can make it look cartoony, which makes it look cartoony. Anyway, I am not going to do all of that. I'm going to turn off a lot of stuff that I don't need. I like to use real view graphics. That's just me. And I like to use perspective because it's just how I see things. So let's talk about this material real quick. And then we'll talk about the evaluate. So right here on the left hand side of your feature tree, the feature manager design tree, you'll see material is not specified. So it looks metallic, but it's not specified. What we can actually do then is right click on material, and there's some materials sort of pre-added for you, and you can edit this list. But like if we plain carbon steel, it's going to change the shape of it, and you might even notice that there's like a bit of a texture right there. So let's do ABS polycarbonate. Let's do a brass color. We can do copper. I'm going to go ahead and hit edit material, and I'm going to go to aluminum, and I want to specify 6061 T6. Hit apply, hit close, and again the view has changed. Alright, so what then is the purpose of that? Why do we care other than, you know, like how it looks? I mean, looks are kind of important, you know, if you're trying to get an idea for your part, like what it might look like. But here's the thing: if this was a 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter cube of 6061 T6 aluminum, we could then estimate or come really close to how much this thing weighs by going to our evaluate tab. And then in our evaluate tab, we have interference detection. We can do measure, markup, mass properties, screen, you know, sensor. We can do all kinds of things. So for now, I'll just show you a couple things. Like this is our measuring tool, so we can come in and just verify, like hold over this edge and it becomes orange. Click that, and there we go. Our distance, our total overall distance between this line and this line is 50 millimeters. So I'll drag that call out over there. And then this line that we just selected there is 50 millimeters. Expand this. You can see some callouts there. We're saying the distance is 50. The delta, or the change in X, is 50. The delta in Y is 0. The delta in Z is 0. Anywho, let's clear the selection. Let's close that out. How much does a 50 cubic millimeter of aluminum weigh? We can go to mass. And in this part here, we can see that our mass is going to be around 337.5 grams. But if you're like me and you're like, grams, or maybe you're, I don't know, maybe you're like some other thing. So you can come over here and just be like, I want my mass to be Maybe I want it to be in milligrams. Maybe I want it to be in kilograms, or maybe I want it to be pounds. So I'm just going to get okay. And you can see that it weighs just under 3/4 of a pound. So that's kind of the purpose of why you might want to declare your material a little bit more accurately, because then you can become a little bit more aware of like how much that part weighs. If you're trying to do like cost estimates, maybe you're going to call the yard and ask them, hey, I want to get, I need this much aluminum. It's going to weigh, 40 pounds. You can kind of come right off the bat and know, how much that may or may not cost you. When we talk about my other projects, the robots, it's really important to know how much things weigh. So just for funsies, let's go ahead and open up this robot. Okay, I'm going to hit Control 7 to get this isometric view going on now. So you got to understand that this bottom plate and this second plate, they are made out of aluminum, and they're 1/2 inch thick. And then this top plate up here is also made out of aluminum. It's a 1/4 inch thick, and then all of these weird looking rails, those are all aluminum. I have aluminum here. I have some really heavy duty casters here. I have some motors and such down there. I have the motor mounts. And so by properly modeling all of these various parts and declaring their properties as close as I can, like right here I have rubber, but not all of this wheel is 100% rubber. I actually have some metal in there right on this ring. So by being as close as I can come over to evaluate, and I can say, how much does this robot weigh? So go over to, it doesn't have a valid density. I don't want to hear that. So generally speaking, this robot's going to weigh 121 pounds. That's important stuff to know, because then that derives how much battery packs and even more weight am I going to add by adding battery packs and management systems and yada yada yada. How much do I need to worry about when it comes to like the inertia and all these other really sciencey stupid numbers that you would need to know for doing roboticist work. You can also look at like right here, the center of mass. In the Y direction, it's around 8 inches from the floor. It's a little bit front heavy, and it's perfectly balanced on the X axis. So these are all things that are like super important to people that like building robots. Anyway, enough of that. I'm going to not bore you with building robots now. So let's see. We covered sketches. We created a sketch. That's our sketch there. We did an extrude in our features commands. We did an extrude, and there's all these other ones. So let's just start playing with some more of these features. So for now, let's do fillet. Let's say we want to smooth out all of the corners or some of these edges here. We can click on these lines that we want to fillet. I'm going to rotate over, and we can zoom in and we can see that it's going to create a 1 millimeter fillet. Maybe we want this to be smooth on all the edges, so we're going to select. And you'll notice that when I hover over this corner that is unseen, it turns orange, so we can select that as well. Select that one as well, and that one, and this one. And finally, let's delete that. I don't want to select the face. I want to select an edge. And we will hit OK. And cool. Now we have like really smooth edges. Maybe this could end up being like a really weirdly shaped or sized dice. So Control 7, we'll go back to our isometric view. I'm going to add another feature so we can play around with rolling back on the history or this feature thing. So let's do this. We have two features, a fillet and a base cube feature. Let's do another sketch, and we're going to create it on this face. We're going to create a sketch there. Okay, and notice how whenever I create the sketch, notice how it automatically zooms to the face. You can sort of mess with that, right, by just twisting your camera and playing around with that. But if you wanted to get back to that, you can do something called getting normal to. So on this sketch, I'm going to right click, and there's this little arrow pointing up. I'm going to say normal to, and it gets me back right, like facing the sketch correctly. So what I want to do now is I want to punch a hole through this square. But in order to do that, what I really want to do is find out where the center, the exact center of this square would be. So let's try using a center line. And as I hover over this inference of the existing geometry, I get this little marker that pops up that says this is the center of this physical property. So I can click that. And as I do that, you'll have these yellow lines pop up, and these are inference lines. Like these ones infer that it's straight up and down or vertical. These ones infer that it is horizontal. So I'm going to go ahead and just hold it horizontal, let it snap all the way across, and then I'm going to hover until it hits this part of the fillet feature from the previous feature, and hit click, and right click and hit in chain. I want to do that one more time, so I'm going to come over here, find the pop-up inference that this is center, and again we get our yellow inference lines, so we come all the way down and click, right click, in chain. So now I have these dashed lines. Let's see if maybe, yeah, so now I have these dashed lines that are going to help me place my hole. So let's take a circle now, and let's place the center of the circle right here on this dot or this point. We'll hit that, and I'm not trying to put too many isms on you, but when I do my drawing of circles or just drawing of anything, I try to keep the inference, I don't like to just do some random 45 degree this way or this way or this way. I like to keep this drawn out and, constrained to something. So I'm just going to hold it to the vertical or horizontal, sorry. All right. So now we have the radius of our circle is at 14 millimeters, and obviously radius is not quite diameter. It's half of that. So we can just type in 20. Well, I want it to be. Let's do 10. Okay. So then with that logic, if I hit OK, and I come over here to this circle, you can see now that I have a diameter of 20. And when you're placing your dimensions, honestly, again, I'm not trying to put too many isms on you, but I like to call it out in some kind of sensible way. And because this is such a small circle, doing this looks a little cramped. So doing this doesn't look as cramped, but I'm actually going to place it here for now because what I want to do is change it to 25 millimeters. And now it doesn't look as cramped. Alright, so let's go ahead and hit OK. Awesome. Now, with the sketch still active, what I'm actually going to do is try to control 7. Um, let's go ahead and create another feature using this sketch by going to the features command and then going up to this extruded cut. And we have this selected here. So if we look at our selected contours, we can clear the selection and we can hover over it and click again. And you can see like it seems like it's automatically going 50 millimeters or all the way to this face, but is that even correct? Right? Because like I'm just able to blindly drag this. So I can just say, well, I want it to be right about there. Or I want it to be, you know, just somewhere way out here. And what this would do would, I think it would create a hole here and then add material back here. So this is kind of not really super controlled. So if we go back to this direction 1, go back to this drop down, we can tell it like, hey dude, I actually want you to go up to this surface, and you'll see this new box here that's saying, okay, which surface do you want me to go to? So I'm going to click on this back surface and it'll bring it all the way up to that face, and it will be controlled. So if I change the shape of the box, if the box got longer, then this hole would this feature would basically carry on. It would propagate to the new position of the face. So for now, I'm just gonna click OK, and we have a hole. All right, and so for funsies, let's go back to this base cube feature and let's edit the edit sketch. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this one and this one. I'm going to get rid of this equal length, add a dimension to this one, and say 75. Hit OK. Save our sketch. And then look. And what's happened there is that because we defined that this extruded cut should begin here and end at this face, when this face moves, so does that particular portion of that feature. Okay, so let's see here. So now if I want to play with my features, I was basically doing this because I wanted to get to this particular point where you can roll back using this blue bar. You can roll back your features. So I want to be like, well, I don't really want to have a hole there, so what does it look like without a hole? Cool. No, I want to put the hole back in. So you can roll back your history. You can roll it forward, roll it back, and you can see what effect that might have. You can even go back and say, I don't want to fill it. I want to go, no, I want to fill it. Okay, and we can go all the way. We can roll all the way forward. Another thing that we can do, instead of rolling back, I can suppress a feature. So I've got this cut extrude 1. I'm just going to change the name of this. I'm going to put hole. Okay. So let's do that and that. Okay, so I've got my hole called out. All right. So let's go ahead and suppress this so we can just right click on that. And there's this little arrow that's pointing down, and it's going from a solid blue to a clear see-through sort of thing. So we can just click that and it'll suppress that feature. But the feature's still there. It still exists, it's just suppressed. And if we were to, for example, 3D print this, the feature's still there, but it would not actually 3D print that way. So we can go to unsuppress by right-clicking and hitting unsuppress. Here's a really, really fun little piece that I think really stands out from Fusion 360. And again, I'm not trying to spokesperson for one software or another, but check this out. You can have multiple configurations for the same part. So let's just pretend that this little 50 millimeter by 75 millimeter with a 25 millimeter hole, let's pretend that this is a block. Um, and I don't know, it's like, let's just say it's for like a go-kart or something really silly like that, right? So we can change the the features based on the configuration. So to really drive this point home, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to sketch. I'm going to create a new sketch. I'm going to click on this face here. And then for the sake of brevity, I'm going to grab a center point circle, find the center point of this line here. Looks like it's roughly somewhere right yonder. I'm going to come out. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to do a diameter of 25 divided by 2. Cool. Alright. I'm going to hit OK. And then I want to do a feature extruded cut. I'm going to say it's that cut. I want to be very specific and tell it I want you to go to that surface, dude. Hit OK. So now I've got this four-way block. Almost looks like a manifold for our go-kart. I'm gonna just make this a little bit more interesting and just add some fillets. So it's not that sharp edge there. And let's make it 2 millimeters and hit OK. Cool. So I've got this part, but maybe on my go-kart, like, I don't know, maybe this is like a chassis mount or something. Maybe not every single one of them needs to be with 4 holes. Maybe they only need 2 holes. So here's what we can do. We can go to this third tab in our feature manager design tree, our configurations manager. I can right click on this and I can say add a configuration. So I'm going to call this 4 holes. And yeah, I'm not going to get too crazy on this for now. I'm going to go ahead and add the check mark. So I have my default. I have my 4 holes. I can come in here and say add another one. I can say I want this one to have 2 holes. Okay. And then maybe I want to do something at another configuration. And I just want to do no fillets. I probably did not spell it right. So now that we have some different configurations, let's go to the 2 holes and let's do a suppress on this one. So if I go to 4 holes, there's 4. If I go to 2, there's 2. Okay. But you'll notice that I've just made a little bit of a mistake. The mistake I made was that this fillet 2 is dependent on it's dependent on cut extrude being a thing. So if I suppress cut extrude to 2, if I suppress this cut extrude, or yeah, if I suppress this one, then the fillet 2 goes away. So there's a little bit of a design issue where I got a little bit ahead of myself. But I just wanted to show you that, you know, instead of creating the whole part from scratch all the way, you know, from the beginning, why do that to yourself when you can just create different configurations? This is like totally a life-changing thing that I discovered with Fusion or with SolidWorks, because in Fusion 360 I would probably design this and then I'd have several files that I would literally go in and say, this is a 50 by 75 millimeter block with 2 holes, and then I'd have another one that says this 50 by 75 with 4 holes. It's completely annoying. Um, maybe in here, in this no fillets version, maybe I want to just say, you know what, dude, I don't want fillets, so I'm just gonna suppress them, and there's no fillets. Maybe I want to get rid of these fillets too. Oh no, it's dependent on something, so we can't really do that. Another design oversight on my part. As a matter of fact, I would probably try to move, or let's see, parent children, I think is the thing, parent child. Fillet 1 is a child of base cube feature. No, I'm not going to do that. I will get to that weird undoing of children and parent relationship in another video, perhaps. So let's go back and just unsuppress the whole, unsuppress that one. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. So that's like the basics of creating a part. I think I'll save assemblies for next week. Yeah, we'll do assemblies next week. So let's just make sure I'm covering all the little things that I wanted to cover today. So you'll see down here at the bottom, we're in editing part mode. That's like in our status bar. We can tell that the part is not saved because there's an asterisk up here in the title bar. So if we were to save this, then that asterisk would go away. We can right click in the viewfinder and get access to various menus. We can edit our scenes, we can open drawings, just like very, recent commands, contour select tool. But if we right click on this, then that changes, right? Maybe I want to right click on that. I can create a sketch on this face, or I can edit this feature, or I can create a new, so edit sketch, create a new sketch. Maybe I want to change the appearance. Maybe I want to roll back from here, or maybe I want to add a fillet. So there's, even I can go normal to, and like get the view to go normal to that face. Let's see, breadcrumbs. So if I click this, so I click on a feature and you can see we have breadcrumbs. So the breadcrumbs are basically just like what we're specifically looking at when it comes to a feature, like model geometry. It basically helps us kind of dial down into the hierarchy of our design. So you can see right now we're talking about part one. We're messing with the solid body and then specifically dealing with this feature. So if I click the whole, then it changes, and you'll notice there's a drop down. It's indicating that there's a child called sketch 2. Same thing happens here. We're looking at sketch 3. So I can click that, and sketch 3 becomes highlighted in blue. Let's see. We can do left mouse buttons, do selects. So we can select this whole thing here. Our shortcut button. So if I right click and drag, I get a shortcut to all these different views. I can zoom in on that view. Let's see. I can again pan around and orbit by holding the middle mouse button, just clicking and dragging. I can hold the shift key, middle mouse button, click and drag up and down, and it zooms in. I can hold the control key and click center mouse button or center mouse wheel, and it moves the part around, pans it around. Yeah. So I think that's like not too bad for a very gentle introduction to SolidWorks. Go to the Go Create facility with this newfound knowledge and just the very basic understanding of the user interface, and attempt to create some just basic parts. Don't worry about creating like a specific part. You're not going to model the engine of a Porsche today or tomorrow. And if you did, after only knowing SolidWorks for a grand total of, let's see, how much time have I been on? I don't know. If you did manage to pick up SolidWorks in just this very short period of time, 1 hour, 18 minutes, and 27 seconds, enough to model an entire Porsche engine, my hat's off to you, and I'll buy you a Diet Coke from the vending machine the next time I go through. But anyway, go to Go Create and open SolidWorks and just create a few parts and play around with some of the features and the sketching stuff. Don't worry about surfaces right now. We will get into surfaces. They are a little bit harder to do. And then next week, we will attempt to create an assembly. And we'll talk a little bit more about, like relations and fully defined sketches and all that kind of stuff. Anywho, this has been awesome, and thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next Tuesday, 7:30 Central Standard Time. And again, if you have any comments, please comment in the video below. Like, subscribe, share, ring the bell, and all that other nonsense that YouTube people often say to become notified when I am going to do my next video, which, spoiler alert, is on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And for our military friends, 19:30 on Tuesdays. All right, cheers.